Essentially, the fact that Spain could be next after Australia to ban social media for the under-16. Pedro Sanchez is calling it the digital Wild West. All this and more on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. First up, let's bring you all the headlines here tracking for you this Wednesday morning. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar begins his U.S. visit, meets U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as India-U.S. ties strengthen after tariff cut deal. Ensuring dairy and agriculture remain fully protected, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says India-US trade deal will open export opportunities while safeguarding sensitive sectors. US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer calls India-US trade agreement an exciting opportunity as Washington moves to finalize the landmark deal. Wingtips of an Air India and Indigo aircraft touch while taxiing at Mumbai airport. Flights grounded and DGCA orders probe. All passengers are safe. US President Donald Trump signs fresh spending bill ending a 4-day partial government shutdown triggered by Democratic resistance to fund the agency enforcing its immigration crackdown. Donald Trump calls on Americans to put the Jeffrey Epstein scandal behind them, even as the case sparks political firestorm on both sides of the Atlantic. Washington confirms talks with Iran are still planned this week, despite U.S. warplane shooting down Iranian drone near American aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says Madrid will seek to ban social media use for under-16s to shield children from harmful content, drawing an angry backlash from ex-owner Elon Musk. And Elon Musk also criticizes French authorities after a raid on offices of X in Paris linked to investigations into alleged political interference and intimate deepfakes. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has begun his visit to Washington, holding back-to-back meetings with top officials of the Trump administration as India and the United States move to deepen cooperation across trade, energy, defense, nuclear ties, critical minerals and technology. The Jaishankar's meetings come just today after US President Donald Trump announced major trade breakthrough with India following a conversation with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, as part of the deal, reciprocal tariffs on Indian goods have been slashed from 50% to 18% effective immediately. The External Affairs Minister began his 3-day visit by meeting US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, with officials calling the talks crucial to operationalizing the new economic agreement and firming up its finer details. Now, taking to social media platform X, Jaishankar said he had a fruitful discussion on advancing economic partnership and strategic cooperation with a focus on trade facilitation, market access and regulatory coordination. Now, later, Jaishankar met US Secretary of State Marco Rubio as both sides reviewed the broader India-US strategic partnership, strengthening ties after the landmark tariff deal. And ensuring that India's sensitive dairy and agriculture sectors remain fully protected, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal said the country has secured its core interests in the bilateral trade pact being finalized with the United States. And listen in.
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने हमेशा एग्रीकल्चर और डेयरी इन दोनों सेक्टर्स को संभाला है, उनके हितों को संभाला है और इस क्षेत्र में लोगों को उज्जवल भविष्य मिले और मौके मिले, आमदनी बढ़े, उसके लिए लगातार काम किया है। कभी उनके साथ, उनके हितों के साथ समझौता माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने नहीं होने दिया और मुझे खुशी है कि पूरा देश इस बात को समझता है, इस बात का उनको आकलन है और यूएस ट्रेड डील में भी भारत के जो सेंसिटिव सेक्टर्स हैं, एग्रीकल्चर को लेके, डेयरी को लेके, उनको संरक्षित किया गया है। हमने पूरे देश भर से आई हुई खबरों को देखा, चारों ओर उल्लास है।
And staying with the same story, calling it a positive signal for exporters, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said US President Donald Trump's decision to slash tariffs on Indian goods to 18% will help boost India's exports. Now, speaking to the Press Trust of India, Sitharaman said she expects exports to pick up as Indian companies expand in new markets, adding that the tariff cut is a positive sign for exporters.
The announcement since after yesterday was on tariff reduction from the 25% and over and above that some punitive 25%. It's come down to 18. It's a very good news. So it's reduction in tariff.
Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said India has committed to stopping purchases of Russian oil and instead buying energy from the United States and possibly even Venezuela that would directly benefit the American people. Leavitt added that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also committed to a $500 billion investment in the United States spanning energy, transportation and agriculture products. Remember, Piyush Goyal yesterday said that that a joint statement is going to be issued shortly. Listen in to Caroline Leavitt.
India committed to not only no longer purchasing Russian oil, but buying oil from the United States, also perhaps from Venezuela too, which we know will now have a direct benefit on the United States and the American people. And in addition to that, Prime Minister Modi committed to $500 billion of investments into the United States, including for transportation, for energy, and for agricultural products as well. So this is another great trade deal.
And even as the Indian side has neither confirmed nor denied any of the details mentioned by the US President in his first tweet regarding the India-US trade deal, the trade representative Jemison Greer in US has said that India has agreed to reduce tariffs on a range of agricultural products, manufactured goods as well as chemicals under its trade agreement with the United States, calling the deal an exciting opportunity for both the countries.
We know the specifics, we know the details. It's a very exciting opportunity. On the one hand, we'll continue to maintain some level of tariff against India, 18%, because we have this giant trade deficit with them. But they've also agreed to reduce their tariffs for us on a variety of agricultural products, manufactured goods, chemicals, medical devices, etc. It's an exciting opportunity for both countries.
And while the only clarification we got in that press conference yesterday from Minister Piyush Goyal was that India's critical agriculture and dairy sectors will continue to be protected, US Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins has sparked attention with a post on X shortly after US President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi announced the India-US trade deal. In her post, Rollins thanked President Trump for what she called delivering once again for American farmers, sharing a detailed note on the agreement that are likely to raise eyebrows in both Washington and New Delhi. Take a look.
The United States of America's Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, put out a post on X shortly after both President Trump and PM Modi announced to the world of an India-US trade deal. Rollins' post is bound to have raised some eyebrows on both sides, that is the US and in India. She said, and I quote, "Thank you, President, for once again delivering for our American farmers. New US-India deal will export more American farm products to India's massive market, lifting prices and pumping cash into rural America. In 2024, America's agricultural trade deficit with India was $1.3 billion. India's growing population is an important market for American agricultural products, and today's deal will go a long way to reducing this deficit, unquote. Closer home, an Indian official told Reuters that the India-US trade deal includes some agricultural products after a Trump aide took to social media hailing the deal as a boost to American rural farmers. He was obviously alluding to the tweet put out by Brooke Rollins. The official also said that talks with the US for a more comprehensive deal are underway. While the revised tariff structure leaves India better placed than Indonesia, which faces tariffs of 19%, and Bangladesh and Vietnam at 20%, agriculture has always been a no-go area when it comes to trade deals. Would India really make a big shift in its long-standing policy on agricultural trade? Given that the United States has surpassed China as India's largest trade partner, there is little justification for not having such an agreement. Bilateral trade is now roughly $120 billion. India imports roughly $40 billion worth of goods from the United States, meaning that India runs a relatively modest trade surplus with the United States, even as India's overall trade balance is in the negative. What are the key agricultural products that India imports from the United States of America? Tree nuts, that includes almonds, followed by walnuts and pistachios. Fruits, that includes apples, blueberries, pears and cranberries. Fibers. Here we import raw cotton and even cotton waste. Various sorts of pulses are also imported by India from the United States. Furthermore, India imports alcoholic beverages, bourbon and other whiskey products. Edible oils such as soya bean oil, plantain seeds and processed foods, some of them are also imported by India from the United States of America. Within the subset of agri-products, what can Indian consumers look forward to? Cheaper California almonds, maybe for starters. Now let's look at what are the agricultural products that India exports to the United States of America. India largely exports marine products, rice that includes basmati and some other varieties of rice, spices, chili, cumin, cardamom, coriander, all included, processed and fresh fruits, and also included are vegetables and juices. Cashews is one dry fruit that India exports to the United States of America. Essential oils, coffee, oil cakes, sesame seeds, herbal and Ayush products are some of the other products that India exports to the United States of America.
And just days after India signed a free trade agreement with the European Union, US President Donald Trump announced a trade deal with India. And of course, the move comes after Trump imposed steep 50% tariffs on Indian goods in August last year. So which deal is better for India, the one with the United States or the one with the European Union? Take a look.
In a remarkable development between the two largest democracies in the world, US President Donald Trump has announced an agreement to a trade deal with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The US will lower tariffs on goods from India to 18% from 25% as part of this new deal. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said that India will reduce trade barriers to zero and will also stop buying Russian oil. An additional punitive tariff of 25% imposed by the US on New Delhi as a result of its refusal to stop buying oil from Russia will also be dropped. President Trump also said that PM Modi was committed to buying American products at higher levels, including purchases worth more than $500 billion in US energy, technology, agriculture, coal, and some other products. This announcement has come in less than a week after India and the European Union announced a landmark trade deal that capped nearly 2 decades of an on-off negotiation. PM Modi said on X that he was delighted that an agreement with the US has been reached. The fine print of the deal, however, is still to be looked into. So far, it seems to be an in-principle commitment to lower or phase out duties on selected US products rather than an immediate elimination of all import duties. Non-tariff barriers encompass various restrictions such as licensing rules, quotas, certification requirements, local sourcing norms, and regulatory approvals that can limit market access. Trump's post did not specify how trade barriers would be reduced or which US products India had committed to buying. Officials on both sides are yet to release a detailed framework of the deal. In the trade deal that was signed with the European Union, while tariffs on over 96% of traded goods were eliminated, key farm products were left untouched. If the deal is finally carried out, the move would mark a significant shift in India's long-standing trade approach, which has traditionally depended on protective measures to support domestic industries. It could open the door wider to US agricultural goods, energy supplies, and manufactured products. India has not publicly confirmed any plan to remove such barriers, raising questions about how far New Delhi is prepared to liberalize its trade policy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi welcomed the development, however, calling it a boost to Made in India products. He did not comment on other elements outlined by President Trump.
And with the tariff reset now in place, India is expected to gain a clear edge over regional competitors such as China, Bangladesh and Pakistan in the US market. Labor-intensive sectors including textiles, gems and jewelry, leather and footwear and marine products are likely to be the biggest beneficiaries. So how does this new trade agreement give India an upper hand over other nations? Let's take a closer look.
Under the India-US trade agreement, tariffs on Indian products in the US market will now be reduced from 50%, which was the highest in the world, to mere 18%. As a result, India is expected to benefit significantly compared to the neighboring countries such as China, Bangladesh and Pakistan. This is going to benefit a number of sectors, especially labor-intensive sectors such as textiles, gems and jewelry, leather and footwear, marine products and much more. The point to note is that while the composite tariff was 50%, around 25% was due to Trump's opposition of India buying a lot of Russian crude oil, which he thought was being used to fund the aggression against Ukraine. That part will be eliminated. The reciprocal tariff of 25% will now be reduced to just 18%. The rate is lower than the neighboring countries of India. This will help Indian exporters access the US market at a lower price. Let's have a look at the rate of tariff Washington will now have an effect against some of the major economies. Earlier, the tariffs against India were raised to 50%. They came into effect from September 2025. But following the trade agreement between the two countries, which were on the negotiating table since February 2025, this provides India with cheaper access to US market. As is evident from the table above, India will have some advantage over several of its neighbors in Asia as far as tariffs are concerned. But some developed economies have lower tariffs in the 10% to 15% range. India has also secured some significant advantages in the free trade agreement with the European Union. The India-US trade agreement can be a positive both for the stock markets and for the Indian rupee, which was declining against the US dollar for the past several months. However, no details are yet available on the trade deal or the market access that the US got in India through the deal.
And with that, we will slip into a very short break. But coming up, the day after yesterday's rally on stock markets, Gaurang Shah will be here to tell us why are we seeing the massive sell-off in India's IT stocks this morning. And overall, while consolidation was expected, other sectors continue to be in the green. This and more on the other side. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
इम्तियाज जी के फादर को बीमारी के कारण अचानक हॉस्पिटल में एडमिट होना पड़ा। पॉलिसी बाजार की टीम ने हॉस्पिटल पहुंचकर लाखों का क्लेम अप्रूव करवाने में पूरी हेल्प की। पॉलिसी बाजार पर 1 करोड़ का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 550 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
रिश्तों को रंग दो, दुनिया को रंग दो।
Birla Opus Paints. Ever wondered what makes the night come alive? Where flavors, lights and laughter dance in harmony. When the sun sets, stories rise. Of kitchens, cocktails and charisma. What makes your city's night so happening? Let's find out.
Good service, good food and a good location.
You need to explore, you need to experiment.
But they will never forget how they felt when they came to your restaurant.
Being a chef, it's my priority to deliver taste in a plate with good presentation, unique innovation.
My definition of mixology would be to get people drunk in a safe and happy way. Don't drink on the job, that's for sure.
Mixology, you can play around with anything. You can create the stories, you can create the recipes.
Let's cheers on that note with our friendship.
Indulge in the finer things in life with Radico presents Lounge Nights. Discover the creme de la creme of India's culinary and nightlife scene. From trendy bars to exquisite restaurants, we've got you covered.
Welcome back. Let's bring you all the action from the stock markets. First up, let's begin with Wall Street that closed sharply lower on Tuesday as investors grew cautious about rising AI competition across the software sector, with markets turning defensive ahead of key earnings from Alphabet and Amazon later this week. However, it was a milestone day for Walmart, making it the first brick-and-mortar retailer ever to hit the $1 trillion mark in stock market valuation. Take a look.
Wall Street ended lower on Tuesday, with the Dow dropping about 0.33%, the S&P 500 shedding more than 0.8%, and the Nasdaq losing more than 1.4%. Investors worried about AI creating more competition for software makers, keeping them on edge ahead of quarterly results later this week from Alphabet and Amazon, shares of which both ended lower. Melissa Brown is Managing Director of Investment Decision Research at SimCorp.
Today, it seems that the AI trade in the U.S. is, back to being questioned. I think, things had gotten a little better for those stocks for a while. But we're seeing, I think that, again, we've got stocks that have high valuations. For sure, they have good earnings, but, at some point, their valuations get ahead of, their future earnings, meaning they're expensive and, are only going to get more expensive until we start to see a correction like this. So I think that, maybe that trade is pausing for a bit.
AI heavyweights NVIDIA and Microsoft each fell almost 3%, while other tech names, including Salesforce and Adobe, lost around 7%, and Intuit slumped 11%. AI data firm Palantir bucked the trend, rallying almost 7% after strong quarterly results late on Monday. Healthcare stocks came under pressure after Wegovy maker Novo Nordisk warned that it expected a steep decline in annual sales. The company's U.S.-listed shares plummeted nearly 15%. Rival Eli Lilly shed about 4%, while obesity drug maker Structure Therapeutics lost more than 6.5%. But it was a milestone day for Walmart, with shares climbing about 3%, making it the first brick-and-mortar retailer ever to hit $1 trillion in stock market value.
And from Wall Street to Dalal Street, it seems the knock-on effect of the decline that we saw in US tech stocks is also dampening the mood on Dalal Street, with the IT stocks under tremendous pressure this morning overall, pulling down the benchmark indices, Sensex and Nifty, which are more or less in the flat territory, a gap down open, some would call it. But as things stand right now, Nifty 50 at just about 25,700 odd levels, Sensex below that 83,650 levels at about 83,614 at about 9:20 a.m. Meanwhile, the small cap space, potentially the exporters, the leather, textiles, gems, jewelry, the sectors directly impacted by the slash in US tariffs from 50 to 18%, likely to be on the move this morning. Volatility in the Indian markets, despite the kind of headwinds we are seeing for the IT sector, is a little lower as compared to yesterday at under the 13 levels. Let's pull up the Nifty 50 heat map and try and see which are the sectors. And oh my God, the IT sector is down. On an average, stocks are looking at anything between 5 to 6% decline this morning. We'll look at them one by one. TCS is at about 5.5% in the red this morning. Infosys down about 5.82%. HCL Tech about 5.77%. Wipro marginally better, if you can call it that, but still down about 4% or so. Tech Mahindra also down about 5%. So major bloodbath in the IT space. But the rest of the sectors, despite the massive rally we saw yesterday, are continuing to gain some ground. Reliance Industries is up about 1 1/3 percentage point. ONGC, which was among one of the few stocks which was in the red yesterday, is also back in the green, up about 3%. Coal India is up more than 2.5%. Move on to the consumer durables as well as the non-energy, the steel and the aluminium stocks, all in the green territory this morning. So is the case with the health tech space. You've got Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy Labs as well as Cipla, all in the green zone this morning. You also have ICICI Bank positively in its momentum towards the green at about 1.2% higher or so. So that's the scene in the market in the first 5 minutes or so of trading. Let's put this into perspective, because what we are seeing in the IT space is definitely an impact of the tech stocks in the US not delivering value for US investors yesterday. But Gaurang Shah is here to bring us a clear perspective on what to expect in coming days from the Indian stock markets. Gaurang, Senior Vice President, Geojit Financial Services. Thank you so much, sir. Let's hear your disclaimer and then ask you the questions.
Thank you so much, Karthik, for having me on the show. Good morning to all the viewers of News9. Small disclosure, Karthik, we might go into stock specific, that all recommendations that I'll be sharing with you on the show are a part of our fundamental research team recommendations. Our company Geojit or myself, we do not have any kind of personal investments, no financial interest, no conflict of interest, but we give advice to our clients on similar lines and they might have their investment interest. So I think as far as the IT pack is concerned, I think it's a ripple effect or a follow-through effect as far as the correction that we witnessed in the Nasdaq and IT-related stocks. I don't think we should read too much into it. In fact, as a disclosure, Karthik, we have recommendations across the board in IT, small cap, mid cap, large cap, and more importantly, second quarter, third quarter numbers and the verbatim in terms of the business going forward is extremely, extremely positive, whether it is to do with AI or whether it is to do with data centers. And more importantly, the overhang that was there because of the US-India trade deal, that is now in the rear view mirror. Of course, we are yet to know the contours or the details of this particular deal, but nevertheless, the things are moving in positive direction. So I think it's a contra long-term call on IT.
Long-term call on IT, and you mentioned that it's also the small cap and the mid cap IT stocks that continue to be on your horizon. But let's move beyond the IT stocks and look at some of the other sectors which are likely to do well in the context of the reduction in tariffs. But curiously, Gaurang, I want your input on the steel and aluminium sector, because that was one sector which was kept outside of the overall country-wide slab and had a blanket 50% tariff. We don't really know, and so is the case in fact with the auto components, which were at a flat 25%. 25%. So while we await the final contours of the deal that you just mentioned, we are still seeing a lot of positive momentum in these talks. Is the assumption fair to make at this point that perhaps the 18% is going to be universal across all sectors?
When it comes to Donald Trump as the president of America, you cannot have any assumptions, Karthik.
Okay. But what assumptions should investors work with right now who are looking at at the green shoots in the market? What should their assumptions be?
So no, I would say that wait out, Karthik. We don't know the details yet, right? I was reading a report this morning which said that in the next 2-3 days, respective representatives from both countries, US and India, are going to address the details of the trade deal. So instead of jumping the gun and assuming a lot of things, I don't think that will be a good strategy. For speculators, I have nothing to advise because I'm not in a position to advise to speculation short to medium term. Long term, if you really want to understand, first understand what the deal has to say, right? And I have got a little bit of confusion as well. Look, 25%, the initial reciprocal tariff has been brought down to 18%. But I don't have clarity as to what is the status of that 25% additional because of Russia imports that we used to do, right? We have, of course, a lot of reports are there that we've reduced or virtually gone to zero, but there is no clarity over
that's a statement that also came.
Is wait out.
Yeah. So, sure. I mean, in fact, that clarification, Gaurang, also came from Sergio Gore, the US ambassador to India, who said that the 25% tariff on the secondary tariff on India's import of Russian oil also ceases to exist. But questions are still hanging large on whether or not India continues to buy Russian oil. While the quantity has declined, and that's the data we are picking up, we are still buying Russian oil technically. So you're right. I think at this stage, a lot is in that fine print, and only once a joint statement is released will there be some real clarity on where markets are headed. But overall, the sentiment is definitely shifting towards the positive territory, especially after the sort of meltdown that we saw on Sunday, Budget Day. We are seeing that sentiment in the Indian market has definitely moved towards the positive territory. So at a time like this, better to stay invested in your SIPs, better to buy an index fund which is well diversified, or just pause all your investments and wait for clarity?
No, pause is definitely not the answer to all these things. I think continuity is something that you should definitely have.
All right.
And it all depends, Karthik. If you are a low risk appetite, go to index funds or index related, Bs, etc., Nifty Bs, etc. If you have a little bit of elevated appetite, you can look at large cap, mid cap selectively, sectorially. Small and micro cap is something that I would say that only those who have extraordinarily elevated risk appetite should venture into it, because there is still a lot of catch up to do in terms of earnings and what the valuations are. So my sense is that continue your SIPs, continue your investments into equity market, whether it is direct or via mutual fund SIP or a lump sum investment. Look, we corrected quite a bit. We have recovered also some extent. And I think once we have this clarity, the moves towards a new all-time high cannot be ruled out.
All right, a move towards a new all-time high cannot be ruled out, and potentially it might have actually touched that all-time high had the deal been announced on the Friday before budget and not the Monday after budget, because that is where the markets are coming back up from. But Gaurang, I want to spend some time, maybe a minute or so on energy stocks, Reliance Industries in particularly, directly impacted by, India buying or not buying Russian oil, India buying or not buying, or increasing or not increasing American oil, India buying or not buying Venezuelan oil. Overall, the energy prices are likely to hopefully remain stable unless there's a flare-up in West Asia. At a time like this, how are you looking at energy stocks?
Karthik, the biggest joker in the pack is the geopolitical situation and the aggression from US on Iran. And as we all know, Strait of Hormuz happens to be one of the most important transit lines for the supply of energy to the rest of the world. Now, if this particular situation has to take an ugly turn, and if the Strait of Hormuz is freezed or restricted for some time, then the crude oil prices, natural gas prices will go up momentarily for some time, short to medium term. Historically speaking, and of course the outlook that has been shared in the reports that I have read is, those reports say that Brent is likely to be sub $65 a barrel,
okay,
and NYMEX is going to be sub $60 a barrel.
Okay.
It is not that a huge consumption demand has come up on the horizon and these prices have moved upward north and they are going to stay that way.
Okay.
No, it is not that. It is only momentarily. So yes, on Reliance Industries, we have a positive coverage. It is not only this energy play, it is now a well-diversified company,
Telecom,
and new businesses are contributing to a great extent.
All right, point well taken. And while we are talking about oil prices, the possibility of even a temporary blip or a temporary shoot up in oil prices, overall stability is likely to be maintained in oil prices with so many diverse sources now adding to the pool. So India is unlikely to import inflation in the near term, Gaurang, is the hypothesis we are working with. In that context, RBI Monetary Policy Committee that goes into meeting today, rate decision to be announced on Friday. What exactly are your expectations when we are in any case in a fairly low inflation scenario, and that low inflation is also reducing our nominal GDP to some extent?
So Karthik, this low inflation has to be there over a prolonged period of time. Look, last year 2025 we got a cut of 1.25%, right? My assumption is, this is my assumption, my personal view is that we'll have to wait for the new financial year, 1st April 2026 onwards, for any kind of further rate cuts to come through. I think Jan, Feb, March possibly are going to be a month where there's going to be a pause. However, the commentary is something that we'll be looking forward to, and I think the commentary is going to be very supportive.
Okay.
And in case look, monetary credit policy platform is not the only platform wherein rate cuts are announced, right? We have had it before, even outside the credit policy, whenever it is feasible, the RBI and the Monetary Policy Committee has taken the steps accordingly and cut the rates.
Right.
So I don't think Friday is going to be a date when you will meet up with one more rate cut. I think we'll have to wait out.
All right, so no rate cut expected on Friday. We will have to wait it out. Meanwhile, markets have gone back into the green territory this morning. We are seeing Nifty 50 above the 25,780 level, Sensex nearing that 84,000 level. Hopefully right now about 150 points short at 83,850. We leave it at that. Gaurang Shah, thank you so much. As always, pleasure having you here on News9. And with that, we will slip into another short break. A lot more coming up, especially global stories we are tracking for you this Wednesday morning. On the other side of the break, you're watching Morning Brief at 9.
जब 25 साल के प्रत्युष का किडनी का ऑपरेशन हुआ तो पॉलिसी बाजार की टीम ने हॉस्पिटल पहुंचकर 12 लाख का क्लेम अप्रूव करवाने में पूरी हेल्प की। पॉलिसी बाजार पर 1 करोड़ का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 550 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
With Skoda Supercare and growing network across 180 plus cities, you never drive alone. Skoda.
This isn't a trail of peace. This is pressure overload. A hill built for 1,000, forced to carry lakhs.
Instead of lightening the footprint, you have allowed people to actually get into every nook and corner of the Himalayas.
Careless travel, choking hills. If we don't change now, there won't be much left to enjoy.
We need to follow the Bhutan model, regulate people who can access hills.
News9 presents Heal the Hills, continuous coverage.
You're watching News9. This is Morning Brief at 9. I'm Karthik Malhotra. India's Supreme Court of India has delivered a strong rebuke to Meta platforms and its messaging service WhatsApp, tightening scrutiny on data privacy and user consent. Now, the court's remarks mark a tougher stance on how global tech firms operate in India. This explainer up ahead looks at what the judges said, why it matters, and how it could reshape data governance in India's fast-growing digital economy. Take a look.
India's Supreme Court delivered a scathing warning to Meta platforms and its messaging app WhatsApp, saying that if global tech firms cannot follow the Indian constitution, they should leave the country. The bench was hearing Meta and WhatsApp's challenge to a penalty upheld against them. The hearing centered on how WhatsApp's 2021 privacy policy handles personal data and user consent, particularly whether it allows the platform to share sensitive information with other Meta entities for business or advertising use. The court underscored that privacy is a constitutional right in India, protected under fundamental freedoms and cannot be compromised in the name of commercial gain. Justices questioned whether complex policies truly reflect informed consent from ordinary users. WhatsApp's 2021 policy update, which prompted users to accept extensive data sharing terms, was at the heart of the dispute. Meta argued that users could opt out and that messages remain end-to-end encrypted. The court challenged both points. This legal battle stems from a 213 crore rupees penalty imposed by the Competition Commission of India, or the CCI, which was upheld by the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. Meta is now appealing those decisions before the Supreme Court. Judges also questioned whether millions of ordinary citizens, from rural vendors to regional language speakers, can reasonably understand such privacy policies, making the notion of meaningful consent questionable in practice. The court explored how data derived from private chats might fuel targeted advertising, using examples like ad patterns following health-related messages. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta echoed concerns, saying personal data carries economic value and should not be exploited without consent. Meta, represented by senior advocates including Mukul Rohatgi, has defended the policy, stressing end-to-end encryption and user control. The company also notes it has deposited the imposed penalty while pursuing legal remedies. The matter has been listed for interim directions on February 9th before a larger bench. The Supreme Court's strong remarks signal that any compromise on privacy and informed consent will face intense judicial scrutiny, potentially reshaping how global platforms must operate in India.
And staying with news on social media scrutiny globally, Spain will ban social media access for users under 16 and hold tech CEOs criminally liable for illegal content, joining countries like Australia in a growing global push to tighten online safety rules for minors. Take a look.
Spain is set to ban social media for anyone under the age of 16.
We will protect them from the digital Wild West.
Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez announced the plan on Tuesday, along with several measures aimed at ensuring online safety.
Our children are exposed to a space they were never meant to navigate alone. A space of addiction, abuse, pornography, manipulation, violence. We will no longer accept that.
At the World Government Summit in Dubai, Sanchez said platforms would be required to bring in effective age verification.
Real barriers that work.
In Madrid, there were voices of cautious support.
I don't generally like prohibitions, but I understand that this measure is necessary because I believe that children under the age of 16 are not yet capable of managing something as big as social media.
Social media is a huge gateway. It has many good things, but many that are not so good. They are bad. And since we don't know how to handle the negative side, I understand that it is better for social media to remain closed to certain age groups. There are many adults who do not know how to use it either, but I fear that gateway cannot be closed.
Australia in December became the first country to ban social media for under 16s. Other countries, such as France and Britain, are closely watching the move as they consider similar measures. Spain's left-wing coalition government has repeatedly complained about the spread of hate speech, pornographic content and disinformation on social media.
Sanchez said on Tuesday a bill would be introduced next week to hold company executives to account.
CEOs of these techno platforms will face criminal liability for failing to remove illegal or hateful content.
It would also criminalize algorithmic manipulation and the amplification of illegal content. Sanchez said Spain had joined what he called the coalition of the digitally willing with several other European countries to coordinate and enforce cross-border regulation. He acknowledged the tough fight that lay ahead, but stressed the need for countries to defend their digital sovereignty.
And moving on now, a 4-day partial government shutdown in the United States has come to an end after President Donald Trump signed a spending bill that narrowly cleared Congress. The legislation reached the White House after narrowly passing the Republican-controlled House with a 217 to 214 vote. Now, 21 Democrats backed the bill alongside Republicans, while an equal number of Republicans voted against it after refusing Democratic demands to reform the Department of Homeland Security following the killing of 2 U.S. citizens by federal agents in Minneapolis.
Republicans got the job done. Our majority worked together, and we got the bills over the line. So we have now funded 11 of the 12 separate appropriations funding bills for the government for the year, and that's a big achievement because it's a big move towards regular order. It's something we promised and committed to.
Minneapolis has shocked the conscience of America. We ought to be shocked, angry, and disgusted by the taking of life of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. We the people want to end this violent occupation of our cities. We the people deserve answers. The Congress needs to rein in the Department of Homeland Security. That's why I voted, and so many of my colleagues voted against funding the Department of Homeland Security. Not because we don't need Homeland Security, we do, but we need it done within the context of the Constitution and the laws of this country and of our states.
And U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday urged Americans to move past the Jeffrey Epstein controversy, even as newly released documents sparked fresh political and legal scrutiny across both sides of the Atlantic.
I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else, really. You know, now that nothing came out about me, other than it was a conspiracy against me, literally, by Epstein and other people. But I think it's time now for the country to maybe get onto something else.
What would you say to people
like
who feel like they haven't gotten
healthcare,
justice, Mr. President?
something that people care about.
Crypto activity is surging inside Iran, with transaction volumes estimated at up to $10 billion last year, even as U.S. investigators examine whether digital platforms are helping Tehran bypass sanctions. Take a look.
Crypto activity in Iran is booming, and US investigators are reportedly examining whether specific crypto platforms have facilitated sanctions evasion by Iranian officials. Crypto transaction volumes hit an estimated $8 to $10 billion last year in the Islamic Republic, as both state-linked groups and retail investors turned to digital currencies. That was according to estimates from TRM Labs and Chainalysis. A Treasury spokesperson referred Reuters to a September statement announcing measures the department was taking against shadow banking networks supporting Iran. Iran's mission at the UN did not respond to emailed requests for comment. The country has been effectively severed from the dollar-based system and has seen a rapid devaluation of its currency. Oil revenues remain its largest source of foreign currency. A recent wave of anti-government protests and the Tehran government's deadly crackdown have prompted threats of military action from President Trump. And Washington imposed new sanctions on Iran last month. They included on 18 people it accused of being part of shadow banking networks of sanctioned Iranian financial institutions. But researchers say gaining a complete picture of Iran's crypto usage is near impossible, and estimates of the split between state-linked and retail volumes vary significantly. Chainalysis estimates that 50% of Iran's volumes last year were linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, a powerful political, military and economic force with close ties to the supreme leader. By contrast, TRM Labs estimates that 95% of Iran-linked flows come from retail investors. Still, the company estimates the guards have moved $3 billion worth of crypto since 2023. Crypto activity rose sharply during bouts of social and geopolitical instability last year, including during the recent protests. The analysts added that was until the government blocked the internet on January the 8th, citing activity on Iranian exchanges.
In news from corporate America, PepsiCo says it will slash prices on popular snacks like Lay's and Doritos by up to 15% after consumer backlash over earlier hikes, with the CEO of Pepsi's US Foods division saying its customers are feeling the strain, even as the company reported strong quarterly results. Take a look.
Shares of PepsiCo rose Tuesday after the company said it will cut prices by up to 15% on core brands such as Lay's and Doritos starting this week. The move comes after a consumer backlash against several previous price hikes, with the CEO of Pepsi's U.S. Foods division saying its customers are, quote, feeling the strain. Rival Coca-Cola and consumer giant Procter & Gamble have also lowered prices to safeguard market share amid still elevated inflation and delayed food stamp benefits for lower-income families. Packaged food companies are also in for a reckoning this year as the popularity of appetite-suppressing weight loss drugs increases and brands look for ways to keep consumers interested.
In news from corporate America, PepsiCo says it will slash prices on popular snacks like Lay's and Doritos by up to 15% after consumer backlash over earlier hikes, with the CEO of Pepsi's US Foods division saying its customers are feeling the strain, even as the company reported strong quarterly results. Take a look.
Shares of PepsiCo rose Tuesday after the company said it will cut prices by up to 15% on core brands such as Lay's and Doritos starting this week. The move comes after a consumer backlash against several previous price hikes, with the CEO of Pepsi's U.S. Foods division saying its customers are, quote, feeling the strain. Rival Coca-Cola and consumer giant Procter & Gamble have also lowered prices to safeguard market share amid still elevated inflation and delayed food stamp benefits for lower-income families. Packaged food companies are also in for a reckoning this year as the popularity of appetite-suppressing weight loss drugs increases and brands look for ways to keep consumers interested in snacks and sodas. Pepsi CEO said that portion control was the way to keep PepsiCo's categories relevant, adding that more than 70% of the company's U.S. food product line was in single-serve packages, a strategy he said was critical for growth. The company is also refreshing key brands such as Quaker, Gatorade, and Tostitos to focus on low sugar or no artificial ingredients to attract younger households with children. Meanwhile, Pepsi is in the midst of an aggressive cost-cutting plan across its entire business after pressure from activist investor Elliott Management and several quarters of weak sales in the key North America market.
And Walt Disney has named its theme parks chief, Josh D'Amaro, as the new CEO, ending years of succession uncertainty as the media giant navigates AI disruption and industry consolidation. Take a look.
Walt Disney named theme parks head Josh D'Amaro as CEO on Tuesday. It ends years of questions about who would take over from current boss Bob Iger. 54-year-old D'Amaro is due to start the role in March. He's a longtime Disney insider and takes charge as AI and a wave of consolidation hits the media industry. Iger is credited with shaping the modern Disney. That's largely through deals for huge production brands like Pixar, Lucasfilm and 21st Century Fox. Succession questions have long been a weakness for the entertainment giant. It delayed Iger's retirement a number of times. Iger also returned 4 years ago to replace his chosen successor, Bob Chapek, after the pandemic hurt business. Damaro currently runs Disney's Experiences unit, which is the company's biggest profit engine and makes up almost 60% of earnings. The unit includes theme parks and cruises.
Investigation into the platform. The raid is linked to a year-long investigation into suspected abuse of algorithms and fraudulent data extraction by X or its executives. In a statement, the Paris prosecutor's office said it was now widening that investigation following complaints over the functioning of X's AI chatbot Grok. The probe will now also look into alleged complicity in the detection and diffusion of images of a child pornographic nature and the violation of a person's image rights. Musk and former CEO Linda Yaccarino are summoned to a hearing on April the 20th. Other X staff are also summoned as witnesses. There was no immediate comment from X.
Delhi is losing the fight against pollution.
This is not a story of just children. This is the story of every elderly person in the National Capital Region.
Delhi's hazardous air quality.
Smog capital of the world.
Delhi pollution has left us sick and exposed, also frankly embarrassed.
Hazardous air quality are disrupting daily life.
Growing issue of a toxic air looming large over Delhi.
Delhi's air quality index has been hovering between 300 and 400 for the past week.
The culprit was the same PM 2.5, the main pollutant which is emitted from heavy industries, power plants, vehicles, crop burning and coal-based heating.
The overall air quality of the city continues to remain in the very poor category.
We look at how Delhi is once again struggling with danger.
It's not just about today, it's about the future.
When Trump captures Maduro, News9 breaks it first.
It's happening far away, but it has tremendous consequence for the world.
What happens next?
Biggest international headline of the hour.
The US has conducted military strikes.
This is the Venezuelan president.
Maduro faces multiple charges, including narco-terrorism.
This is Maduro being taken to the New York court.
Donald Trump indicated that Greenland might be next.
Where will Donald Trump stop?
A dramatic U.S. operation, power shifts in Venezuela. High-stakes geopolitics unfolding. What does this mean for Venezuela? What does it mean for the world? And what comes next? On point with the facts, unmissable insights. In your interest always. Fastest alerts, hard facts, 360-degree analysis.